Hey, what's up guys? Thank you for tuning in to Loam. In today's video, we're going to be checking out Canyon's Bosch-powered E-Enduro race machine, the Strive-On. Stay tuned to learn all the details and find out how it's been performing. Let's go. Yes, this is a Canyon Strive-On, the bike that they developed with the hope of hitting the top step of the podium in the E-Enduro World Cup. Fabien Barel led the team to design this and just really all focused on going as fast as possible across a couple of days of E-Enduro racing. The Strive-On has 160mm of rear travel using their typical horse-link suspension system. It's not the same as on their regular Strive, their enduro race bike with the shapeshifter tech. Instead, they've opted for more of a spectral or torque style suspension system on this, giving it a slightly different look to the Strive and a little bit more of a, I guess, kind of conventional system overall for suspension, losing that shapeshifter functionality. But whether you would need that or not on an e-bike, we're not so sure, but we'll talk about that later on in the ride impressions. Canyon opted to only offer a CFR frame for the Strive-On, given that this is a race bike that is designed to hit the highest of highs in terms of performance. CFR is Canyon's sort of highest level carbon fibre, so they really optimise the stiffness, the strength and the weight there, which does add a little bit to the cost, but it means that Canyon was able to get the Strive-On frame weight down to just 2.45 kilograms, of course without any of the motor and hardware, but certainly it's a respectable weight for a bike that's capable of taking the abuse that E-Enduro bike does. With this frame, Canyon was keen not to just deliver the absolute stiffest overall performing package. They wanted to really tune the flex characteristics of the bike to deliver the best performance, meaning that you don't get overly fatigued on long descents and also that you're able to keep the traction on the rear wheel a little bit easier. So they focused on creating a very stiff front triangle, meaning that you get a very direct and kind of, all together solid feel in between your hands and your feet. But then in the rear triangle, they optimized the flex to just give a little bit of compliance there to let that rear wheel track and generate some more grip. On the rear, you've got a 27.5-inch wheel. Up front, you've got a 29er, making it a mixed wheel setup, which was done just to give the extra clearance, sort of turning radius and getting that chainstay a little bit on the shorter side than you would if you got the 29er wheel in the back there. And it's just what Canyon opted to go for to deliver the fastest machine possible. In terms of frame features, Canyon's got plenty of space in there for a big water bottle, keeping you hydrated. There's internal headset cable routing, which won't be to everyone's liking, but it is quite a cleanly integrated solution that we've had absolutely no issues with. There's an optional tool mount, and then there's a generous chainstay protector there with a rib design to try and keep things a little bit more quiet. To quickly touch on the geometry figures, Canyon's sort of philosophy, I think quite a lot driven by Fabien Barel, is to have a very long front centre with quite a compact rear end. So that equates to very long reach numbers for the Strive-On. Canyon offers a size range from small to extra large, starting at 450mm and then jumping up 25mm per size up to 525mm for the extra large. Constant across the size range are the 63.5-degree head tube angle, a 78-degree effective seat tube angle, a 445mm chainstay, and a 25mm average bottom bracket drop, which does make it actually quite low, but Canyon spec'd a nice and short crank on there, so pedal clearance isn't too much of an issue. At the Loam, we prefer a slightly shorter reach figure for our e-bikes, and my proportions at 6'2" are certainly longer leg and shorter torso. So I find that sizes around the 470 to 485, 490mm reach range tend to work best for me. And I also say that on an e-bike, you reckon 5-10mm shorter reach is optimal compared to a regular bike, just to account for the slightly different weight distribution and just dynamics of an e-bike. So for this bike, as with the regular Strive, I opted to go for the size medium to test with a 475mm reach. If you go for the Strive-On in the CFR Underdog or the CFR spec that I tested here, you'll get the standard Bosch Performance Line CX Gen 4 motor. And then if you go for the CFR Limited, you get the race motor with the slight upgrade there to the speed and a slight weight reduction. For that motor system, Bosch's Smart System features, so you've got the integrated LED top tube display and the nice Bluetooth mini remote up on the handlebar, keeping a slightly cleaner cockpit, and yeah, certainly giving you all that you really need to know if you're in a race situation where you're just going to be in the race mode, trying to go as fast as possible, and all you really need to keep an eye out is the battery level on your climbs. But some riders may wish to get a little bit more information like speed and whatever, so you can optionally buy the Kiox display from Bosch and fit that to this bike if you so desire. With all of these models, you can choose between either a 625 watt hour or a 750 watt hour power tube battery. This is integrated but removable. You need to take off a little hatch on the big motor cover on the down tube, and then it slides right out with a quick release latch. We did have some issues with that, which we'll talk about a little bit later, but they do seem to have been resolved later on in our test. And it's actually why we ended up taking so long to review this bike, because we just wanted to make sure for sure that it wasn't going to necessarily be a problem for everyone. Happy to report so far we fixed that, but we will chat about that a little bit later. Canyon's currently offering 3 different spec levels of the Strive-On, from the CFR Underdog at £5,500 to the CFR that I tested here at £6,700, and then up to the CFR Limited, top of the range, at £9,000. All of these prices quoted are with the smaller 625 watt hour battery, and if you opt to go for the 750 watt hour battery, the larger unit, then you add roughly £200 extra to get the privilege of that. This is a Fox Performance Elite suspension package of 38 with the Grip 2 damper up front, just losing that Kashima coating of the top spec model, and then the Float X2 Performance Elite out back, which does mean you don't get the full high-speed compression and rebound adjustability, but whether you need that or not, I don't imagine all that many people are absolutely demanding it, and certainly that unit's been performing pretty damn well for me so far. In terms of the group set, you've got the Shimano XT 4-pot brakes with a 220mm front rotor and 203mm out back, then a Shimano XT shifter and derailleur, and then a SLX cassette on there, and then E13 E-Spec plus alloy cranks in 165mm length, giving you a reasonable clearance to avoid those pedal strikes. Canyon specs there, G5 bar stem and dropper. They're kind of in-house brand, which are kind of solid, reliable, fairly simple, in-house alloy units. Certainly do the trick, but maybe won't be to everyone's liking. And I guess Canyon believes that riders who really demand something different would be rather getting something that's slightly cheaper and not having to spend a lot of money just for the privilege of getting a bar that they're going to replace, and then they can add their own preference later down the line. And then you've got a very solid DT Swiss HX 1700 wheel set using their 350 hybrid hubs. Absolutely solid performers, nice and stout rims, and hubs that haven't skipped a beat during the testing. Rounding out the spec is a Ergon nice e-bike saddle and a pair of Maxxis tyres with double down casing in the rear, Exo Plus up front, nice max grip rubber in the front as well. So a really solid tyre choice that'll let you hit the trails, get racing without having to change them out, most likely. Now we've talked through all the specs of the Canyon Strive-On CFR. Let's talk about how it's been performing out on the trails over the last 6 months between the UK and Europe. So the first thing you're going to have to do as a prospective customer of the Strive-On is decide what size is going to work best for you. I'd say that kind of adhering to the stickered sizes on this bike is not going to serve you the best, purely because the reach numbers are so long that you're just going to have, you're going to have to be careful, I think. It'd be very easy to get a bike that's going to be too long for you and then limit the amount of control that you're able to have over it. I know that Canyon does have their theories, and for sure for some riders, especially particularly strong riders who are racing and just want to go as fast as possible, potentially the longer reach theory will work very well and offer a super stable machine at speed. But for the average person who I guess isn't going to have quite as much core strength as these racers and potentially just doesn't want a bike that is only targeted at going flat out and fast and winning race stages, I think that going for those longer reach figures are just going to limit the amount of fun that you're able to have on slightly mellower trails, and also limit the amount of control that you're able to kind of have over the bike and the ease at which you're able to influence the weight balance on it. That's why at 6'2" or 189 centimeters, I opted to go for the medium size with a 475mm reach, which for me turned out to be absolutely perfect. And I do wonder for riders on the longer sizes, the large and the extra large, where the weight distribution will obviously change with the increase in front center and not increase in chainstay length. I'd be interested to see the difference in the performance, in the handling. I feel like you're going to end up with a very different weight bias, especially once you get up to the extra large, which is obviously the case for many other bikes. But yeah, you'd certainly then end up with a bike that aligns closer with Fabien Barel's theory of the super long front center and the tight rear end, because on this size medium, it's just felt really well balanced with that 445mm chainstay not being super short. But anyway, once your sizing is selected and you get onto this bike, it's a very easy bike to set up, I found. It's not a fussy one. You get to the 30% sag range on the rear shock, set up the fork to your liking, and in terms of compression and rebound settings, you haven't had to do anything funky to make this thing perform well. It is a fairly planted machine as standard. It's really nice and soft off the top, really super supple, which means that it can begin to feel a little bit on the sluggish side on slightly mellower trails, but a little bit of a faster rebound setting ended up bringing a little bit more energy and life back into it, and just making it a really good fun all-rounder that's not just pointed to go in absolutely flat out on the gnarliest of terrain. To address the issues that I mentioned earlier, the Bosch Power Tube battery uses a quick release latch, and it's primarily made out of plastic. So there are these two plastic tabs that the latch sort of rotates around, and it means that when the battery is fixed in, the battery kind of force is resting on these plastic tabs to some extent. And essentially after a couple of removals and putting it back in, these plastic tabs ended up wearing out and breaking and fatiguing, and it led the battery not to lock in place quite as tightly. It wasn't like it was going to fall out anytime soon, but it just didn't quite take up the slack as well as it did when it was new, or as it should. So it led to just a slight amount of play in the battery, which then let the connection disconnect. So it meant if I hit a hard compression that was enough to separate the terminals well enough, the battery would, or the whole bike would turn off essentially, because it wasn't getting any power, and then you'd be able to turn it back on, but then as soon as you hit another compression, the same would happen again. Canyon sent me out a replacement Bosch latch. I refitted it in like 2 minutes, and it hasn't caused me any issues since. But yeah, I think Canyon is potentially working on a solution for it. But yeah, basically, I don't think it's a major issue, but it would certainly be wise to grab one of these replacement latches just to have in your toolbox, especially if you're on your travels or at a race weekend, just so if you do end up experiencing any issues, you'll be able to get sorted out pretty quickly. Not a huge issue, I don't think, but certainly one I would like to see rectified just by, you don't need a quick release latch, especially if you've got to undo the plastic motor cover on the bottom anyway to get the battery out. Just use an Allen key and secure it in that little bit more securely, and prevent any of these kind of issues happening. But that's just my 2 cents, and I guess some people will certainly appreciate the ease of the latch there. Other than that though, it's been really trouble-free motoring on this thing. I've absolutely pummeled this thing from bike park laps in Bike Park Lac Blanc in France through to the local enduro trails around here, some seriously muddy rides with mud getting in places I don't think I'll ever be able to get out again. But yeah, basically Canyon spec choices here have been absolutely stellar. There's absolutely nothing that I reckon needs to be changed right out of the box. Ideally, I'd probably stick a longer dropper on it, but that's my super long legs on a bike that is arguably too small for me. And certainly the 170mm G5 unit here has been just about enough and performed flawlessly, as with absolutely everything else. Yeah, really, I can't fault the spec at all, and I just want to buy it, hop on it, get racing or riding wherever you want, and yeah, just save some money for any future, you know, drivetrain wearing out, brakes needing bled, whatever. But I don't think anyone's going to get on this bike and really complain about the spec. Even when you look at the tyres, double down Exo Plus is a really smart call. I think I'd potentially go another step further if it was me in a race scenario, go downhill on the rear and double down on the front. But I know that not everyone else is quite as much as a hack as me, and I really can't argue with Canyon's spec choices there. Let's talk about performance. So that's ultimately the most important thing. It doesn't matter what parts you throw at a bike if the bike itself doesn't perform well. And thankfully, Canyon has done an absolutely stellar job with the Strive-On, and has certainly made it one of the best bikes on the market in the E-Enduro scene. I'm absolutely no doubt about that, and I'm very excited to include it in our 2024 e-bike shootout, where I think it's going to be a serious contender. The climbing performance with that relatively steep seat tube angle, a comfortable geometry otherwise, the Bosch motor, which just does its thing so well, delivering really nicely controlled power, really good kind of blend of range and power when you need it, especially in the EMTB mode, which just seems to, yeah, kind of guess or just know the amount of power that you want to give it. It's really sensitive to the input forces that you do. Yeah, all absolutely stellar, and the kind of suspension platform there that Canyon's opted to use, it doesn't have too much pedaling support as to remove the ability for the rear wheel to track obstacles when you're pedaling it. It sits in a really comfortable spot, slightly on the soft, and yeah, if certainly you got this kinematic on a regular pedal bike, you'd probably find that it doesn't have quite enough support and you'd be reaching for that lockout lever. But in the case of the e-bike, where the motor is effectively smoothing out your pedal stroke that little bit, it's been absolutely spot on, giving you plenty of grip, plenty of comfort, seated or standing. Yeah, really solid climbing performance here, and a bike that I reckon would be an absolutely solid choice for the uphill power stages in the EDR, I guess. The rear end 445mm I think is a really nice sweet spot for a bike, especially on an e-bike, where you don't want it to be overly long, because then the ability for you to get that front wheel up and into the air to unweight it for obstacles becomes excessively hard. 445 is a really nice spot where you still get plenty of front wheel weighting for the climbs, but when you got into the descents, which we'll talk about in a little bit, it's not just all about being planted and going fast. You still retain a little bit of agility and maneuverability, which is really nice to see. Onto the descents, and where the Canyon Strive-On is definitely targeted to be a super fast machine, really capable, and you can feel that kind of downhill racing DNA coming through from Fabien Barel in the sort of design language of the Strive-On. Really nice and slack head tube angle, really supple suspension platform with plenty of end stroke support. I've definitely hit the bottom out bumper on the rear shock more than a handful of times, but this bike just inspires you to absolutely charge, to just ride absolutely any trail as if it's a downhill bike. And yeah, I guess 160mm travel is always going to come to its end at some point if you're riding it on terrain that it kind of inspires you to do so. I think the standout thing for me, and I mean Canyon do talk about it, is the stiffness balance that they were trying to capture in that frame, with a really nice and stiff and stout front end to inspire confidence and give you sort of a really nice connected feeling between your hands and feet, but then allowing the rear end to be a little bit more compliant and flexy to give you the ground tracking capabilities, a little bit more comfort there. And I think Canyon's really delivered on that. It doesn't ever feel like it's a bike that's sort of wallowing or just flexing and limiting the amount of control that you have, but it's not harsh either. It's kind of the best of both worlds in that respect, I reckon, and has been a huge amount of fun. The only real drawback of this thing is that kind of planted suspension feel, as I alluded to earlier. it's not super playful. This is not a bike that you're going to be, you know, really just wanting to ride, park, or slightly more flowy, fun stuff for me anyway, on. It's definitely a bike that benefits from having a little bit more gravity behind it, slightly gnarlier terrain to attack and really make it come alive. It's not to say it's a complete slouch, it's not overly heavy for this style of bike, and the geometry isn't crazy long unless you go for the sticker size and get the longer reach. But yeah, certainly it's still not a super playful bike. It is on the more planted, comfortable, and just really plow friendly side, which is no bad thing for this kind of bike. It's yeah, certainly an absolute rocket ship, and one that's definitely on the slightly more compliant and plush side of things in the likes of the Orbea Wild, which is also probably my favorite bike on the market in the E-Enduro scene. This will certainly keep you a little bit more comfortable by the end of a race day, a little bit less fatigued, I'd guess, which is going to be beneficial if you're liable to getting fatigued or if the days are particularly long. But if it was going to be a downhill race, a direct head-to-head between the Orbea and the Canyon, I'd likely side towards the Orbea just for pure out-and-out speed in a shorter space of time. But I don't think there'd be much to kind of call between the two, and definitely excited to check out, see how they get on going head-to-head in our shootout next year, which you should definitely subscribe to the channel to make sure you don't miss. I hope you guys have enjoyed checking out this video on the Canyon Strive-On, an absolute rocket ship with a dialed spec that's a serious contender for e-bike of the year. If you have enjoyed this video, give us a like, leave us a comment, let us know what you think about this bike, and also stay tuned to see, hopefully we'll be able to update our website to reflect when Canyon has the availability of this bike in North America. For now, UK and Europe, you can absolutely hop on to canyon.com and buy one for yourself, and I can't recommend against it because it is a sweet bike. And yeah, be sure to subscribe to the channel to see more awesome content on awesome bikes like a Canyon Strive-On. Thanks for watching. Catch you on the trails. What do you have to say about the bike?